Chased at work. I've been doubting whether I should post this, but I will, and if it gets taken down, I can't complain. Back in 2016, I was 17 years old, and I was working in a huge secondhand bookstore. So, this building had 3 floors and a basement level. It had a staircase at either end of the building, and every room was a maze of shelves. The building was so large that even when the place was busy, you probably wouldn't see anyone else, unless you were looking for them. On this particular day, business was slow and I hadn't seen anyone all day. My boss told me to rearrange shelves in an isolated corner of the top floor. I'd been working up there for a couple of hours, and during that time, I never heard any doors open or closing or anything like that. If anyone had come upstairs, I would have heard them, because at the top of each set of stairs is a big creaky door that can be heard from anywhere on that floor. As far as I knew, I was up alone. When I went around the other rooms on that floor to see if there was anything else I needed to do, I found nothing. As I walked towards the door that led to the stairs, I had to go down a narrow corridor with a few small rooms coming off them. I checked the first 2 rooms, but I ignored the third because it wasn't used. I opened the door to the stairs and made my way across the landing and down the first few steps. That was when I heard heavy footsteps coming up behind me. I quickly looked back and saw a middle-aged man running straight at me. I just started running down the stairs, and this guy must have been only a step behind me. We reached the next landing and the entrance to the rest of that floor. I didn't stop, and neither did the other guy. We were now on the last flight of stairs, what ended in a room with a heavy wooden door that I would be unable to open before the guy caught me. I knew I had to do something about him. Luckily, I had some scissors in my pocket. I managed to get slightly ahead of him, so I quickly stopped, pulled the scissors out, and turned to face him. He stopped and looked at me, and then the scissors for a few seconds. We just stood there in silence, before he ran past me and straight into a locked exterior door that we never used. He panicked, rattled the handle, and kicked the door a few times. He quickly gave up, opened the door that worked, and disappeared. I never saw him again after that. I don't know what was going on in his head, but I do know that he came very close to being stabbed, so weirdo who must have been waiting for me in an unused room. Don't try that again. You won't get away. Hit on and cornered. So this was about a year and a half ago, but never really had the chance to tell anyone. So I was 17 years old at the time and just coming up to my 18th birthday, and I stand at 6 feet. I was manning my parents' second-hand store for them in a small rural town, as I usually did while they picked up my younger siblings from school. 2 men came into the building, and I greeted them with the usual, "Hello, how are you today?" They started out really friendly and nice and started chatting and asking about the stock, and one of them said to me about me being an attractive woman. I thought nothing of it, as I'm used to being mistaken for being older than I am, so I politely said that I was 17 years old. So when I say that, most people get embarrassed and apologize, but not this man. He just laughed and replied with a, "So?" Alarm bells started ringing in my head, and the second man stood right at the end of the counter, and the creepy flirter at the front, leaving me cornered with only a small storage store to run into. I don't normally get freaked out by unwanted attention, but this guy took it too far and kept flirting, so I felt absolutely uncomfortable and was just genuinely scared that one of them was going to corner me. I couldn't fight them, as one was a fat bastard and the other was a lean man, and I've always learned to never underestimate anyone. And both could beat me with experience, as one was 40 years old, and the creepy one was about 45. The lean one kept moving in closer and closer to me, so I grabbed a pair of sharp scissors in my hand and kept it under the till, ready to use it if either made a move. The cabinet had a glass front and stock on display, and he made a point about asking about the notes right at the bottom. Luckily, I am rather flexible, so I squatted down right so I could still see the pair of them, and in an attempt to get rid of him, I said, "I'll sell them for face value," a move I got in trouble for later, but after I explained, I was off the hook. They had seen me grab the scissors and the big one, surprisingly quiet the whole time, could see them in my hand, so after the transaction, they headed out of the door. As the creepy one left, he had the balls to blow me a kiss and watch from his car until my father came back, also 6 feet. So, creepy man who blew me a kiss, I hope we never meet again, and I hope you rot in hell, you bastard. The worst customer. This was closing in on around 10 years. I've also since moved from where this happened, and don't have any of the saved docs that are in rural related due to it. due to trying to forget about some of it. Despite that, a friend of mine tipped me off to this subreddit because she was a means of support during all of this, so here I am. I'm still up occasionally to people who warn them how creepy customers can be. I was a friendly neighborhood video game store worker at the time, secondhand video game store, early 20s, and also the only non-dude worker there. There were plenty of shy teen boys who would blush and stumble over their words when they talked, lots of "I've never met a girl who's into video games" as you comments, etc., but also plenty of creepy guys that, of course, also mistook my "I'm paid to be nice to you" and giving customer service as that I was totally into them, and therefore my not being a huge bitch meant that obviously I wanted to jump their bones. Thankfully, my coworkers would help nip that whenever they could, always telling guys that they were taking it too far, that I'm nice to everyone, having to be blunt, that I'm being a good customer service worker, not a flirt, and to stop harassing it. But there was this one guy that was so sneaky, and now he went from a creep to literal nightmare. It started off that all my coworkers thought he was a great customer and general great guy because he was some kind of big brother caretaker to a bunch of kids that were mostly mentally disabled or had learning disabilities. He occasionally brought them into the store and buy them a new game or games for the consoles they had at home they came from. At first, I too let my guard down around this guy because obviously a caretaker of disabled children wouldn't be a creep, right? Wrong. Whenever the kids would be meandering around and looking at new games or playing the demo games we had in the store, he liked to talk to us that we were working at the time while he was there. It started innocently enough, but at first I just took that he was really charismatic and upbeat, but was nice to see with someone that helped with who could definitely be considered difficult kids. We had our fair share of meltdowns in stores with the kids he brought. He had a very good attitude with them on de-escalating the situation on what they did, but soon his visits became more frequent, and his charisma started to definitely more lean towards straight up flirting, you know? My coworkers even know aloud that they had seen him coming more often than I did before. They hadn't yet put two and two together, that it was because I started working there. There was one specific visit when he came in, when I was the only one in the store at the time. Coworker was on his lunch at the time, that the flirting suddenly went into high gear. I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was very, very forward and made me balk. I couldn't believe what he had said. I immediately, albeit politely, shut him down. I had to keep it calm and cool because I just didn't want to rile up the kids, you know? Despite the shutdown, he didn't stop. He started coming in more, using the kids as a reason to come to try to bother me. It became suddenly nefarious pretty quickly. Those poor kids had no idea, and legitimately thought he was giving them more attention and dotting on them because he liked them. But that definitely wasn't the case anymore. He straight up told me, again, he was so sneaky at this, that the kids were just an excuse to come see my beautiful self. After this comment, I immediately told my coworkers and boss. They believed me, but at the same time, didn't think it was very serious. However, I forced them to start using signals we give to each other and call with a specific phrase if I needed them, to come back to the store ASAP because the creep showed up. I also asked if we could try and find out the organization he was going through with the kids to let them know what he said about them, but my boss freaked out about getting that involved, specifically. Then one day, I'd opened by myself, and it was super slow. I was also alphabetizing the racks of games out on the floor. We had a bell tied out to the front door. There was a side entrance you can come in through that was attached to a video and movie rental store. The movie store side had a sort of metal gate thing that you had to usually open a bit to get inside of, so that made noise too. I was relying on that to alert me if I had a customer and was in the zone of like storing up the racks or something like that, because I didn't hear anyone come into the store. Then I heard what I thought was my coworker coming in for the day a bit early, not uncommon for them to be honest, give me a fake flirty compliment of "Hey, you sexy thing," which was usually made on our way goofing off with each other when no one was around. He also knew how to open the side door without making a racket, as all of us workers did, so I mock flirted a reply to the extent of, "Haven't I told you that your compliments would get you nowhere and everywhere at the same time?" and turned, only for my jaw to drop. Eyes get huge, and I feel the color leave my face, and I swear, I could feel my organs get heavy inside my body. It was not my coworker, it was the creep. Literally mimicking my coworker's goofy voice down to a goddamn T. He also knew the specific way to open the side door without making a noise. I forced myself to laugh, and I was like, "Oh, I thought you were my coworker. I'm sorry about that." Only for him to reply with, "I know you did, but I like the response you gave me anyways," with a smirk. Cue the skin crawliest of skin crawls. I hopped up and scrambled back behind our cases that separated the workers and the customers so I could at least have some kind of barrier between us. I asked him where the kids were. He told me he purposefully didn't bring them today. He said he was here to see me. I, of course, tried to feign ignorance at first and was like, "Oh, did you need to return something I sold you the other day?" But he laughed at me and again, super forwardly, started flirting with me and asked me out. Keep in mind, I was the only one in the game store, and the worker in the movie store side was way far away. Even if I did, for some reason, need to scream for help, there was no way anyone would have been able to help me in the time. I didn't do flight in the fight or flight option, so I started to get a bit of adrenaline rush and preparing that I might need to fight if he didn't take another rejection well. So again, I rejected him. I told him that I wasn't interested, as nice as he seemed, and I had a significant other. He only smirked again and said, "I have a significant other too. That doesn't mean anything to me. They don't have to know about us or each other." I was fucking floored. This guy was not taking no for an answer. He was a cheater as well. At this point, I was getting really angry. I'm gripping the register so hard, my hands are turning white. That again, I'm not interested. I say it again really firm. And I'm not a cheater as well. And I especially need him to stop doing this with me because it makes me highly uncomfortable and I'm just trying to do my job. Thankfully, I think the worker on the movie side sensed something was up and came over, purposefully shaking the door to make lots of noise. I was like, "Hey, how's your morning been?" while staring intently at the creep. That seemed to do the trick for the time being, because the creep then said, "I'll let you get back to work," with the fucking smarmiest smugness in existence, and left. Once he was out of the store and in his car and away, I just started yelling my head off about him to the movie side worker, and I immediately called my coworker. He was supposed to come in soon, and my boss. We had a meeting about it, and it was agreed that the next time Creep was in the store, kids or not, he would be warned by either the manager or assistant manager that if he didn't leave me alone and only discuss actual things, he would be banned from the store. Then the Creep didn't show up for a while. I thought maybe finally he took no for an answer and moved on. It had been a little over a month since he was last there that I reported, and my coworker said he hadn't been in on my days off either. It was summertime at that point, it's Texas, and our AC broke. It was goddamn miserable, and I had to work for a few hours by myself, because someone had called out for the gateway shift between me and the closer for the night. I had my uniform sleeves rolled up, was trying to roll my pants up to my knees, and had my hair pulled up. Yep, now I've had an undershave forever. Usually I don't have it exposed at work just in case customer or another store manager has an issue with it, but it was unbearable this day, and I pulled up fully exposing the undershave to give my neck and head some kind of relief from the sweatshop my store was. I was pricing newly released games that were on display behind the register, so I had my back to the movie side of the store because again, there was the bell at the front entrance and the gate thing in the middle to warn me if someone was coming. I also didn't really have my back turned for long periods at a time because I'd pause, look around, and keep going. I was leaning back against one of the cases as I was labeling because there was a fan we had blowing behind the registers and trying to get some air up my folded pant legs and apparently let my guard down for just a smidge too long. Next thing I know, I feel a hand sliding up the back of my neck, caressing it, and then cupping the back of my head. This is all undershave area, by the way, and sort of rested their thumb and index finger up under and around my ponytail and the beginning of my hairline of regular length hair in a very I could easily grab you by this hair right now relaxed position. Well, this only lasted for maybe like a second. It felt like time slowed, and it went on for years. I'm pretty sure I had my hairs turn on instantly white after that. I rolled around jerking away as violently as I could and used the game in my hand to immediately break the connection between the hand and my head and glared at whoever was doing that. Some kind of prank. You guessed it, the creep. He sarcastically was shaking his hand like it hurt, oh, and said, "I didn't know you assaulted your customers." I was so instantly furious and so nauseous that he really touched me like that. I couldn't get words to form. I was so ready to lunge over the cases and beat him to a pulp. So he said, "Nice haircut. You into that kinky stuff? I like that. I also like what you said to me last time when you thought that I was your friend. I want to hear some more." And which, that was when I need to snap back into reality, to start yelling at him, top of my lungs. I don't remember what I yelled. I'm sure it sounded like I was possessed and speaking some demonic language or something like that. But it was effective, as it immediately sent one of my coworkers from the movie store running over and him running out. I called my coworker that was coming in later and my boss. My boss called the district manager, who advised to call security for the shopping center we were in. We got a pretty crap shot of his face from our store camera. It was cheap and poor quality, but it was all we had to post at the front of the storefronts that was banning a customer report if someone saw him immediately. The security guards for the shopping center were all updated at that point as well as to who to look for. Everyone, both the game and the movie sides, all worked together to make sure I wasn't alone for any shift, and made sure I had rides to and from my nearby apartment to the store. I lived walking distance, but that wasn't the end, and it somehow got worse from there. For the security report and to log it with the company, my boss pulled up the account the creep used to buy his games and had his membership card under. We quickly learned it was a fake name. The phone number given wasn't active, and we didn't ever have to ID him or have a credit or debit card on file because 1, he always paid in cash, and 2, he always bought it rated E games for the kids he brought in. All of us tried to remember the name of the company and group he worked for being a mentor and caretaker of the kids, but we just couldn't. He had worn a shirt related to it one time, but it was sort of a known thing that he had mentioned from time to time. We also couldn't really call various groups and ask him about him with a fake name, and if I wanted to try and call and email around to ones that were located where I was in Texas to give him a picture, I was told the police would have to be involved, or it might go legal. I was poor and honestly just wanted to be done with this whole thing, so I didn't push it that far, hoping that everything else done so far would resolve it. Then the calls began. Calling the store from different numbers, different people, usually kids, asking if I was working, except for they never really got my name right. It was very obvious they were scanning to try and see when I was working, but the creep didn't seem to remember my name. I also stopped wearing a name tag after that because fuck that. I didn't make children call the store to seem innocent, since my coworkers and management knew that they were kids who loved interacting with me, and I was their favorite. My coworkers would say no one named my name would work here, and they'd always follow with, "She's the only girl that works there, you know what I mean." But the coworkers started telling whoever called that there was more than one girl that worked there, but no the name they'd given. Then they'd always hang up immediately. I had one coworker who was so angry for me, B, if you're a Redditor out there and recognize the story, I miss you, dude, that he started saving the numbers that called the store, and then would call them from essentially a burner phone after his shift, and while he never got an answer, would leave threatening messages. After he started doing that, the calls lessened and eventually stopped. It was during all of this that some of the teens and cool as fuck customers noticed the signs we had of creep and asked about it. They were horrified for me and made me want to cry from trying to band together to help me out. The regular teen customers especially, they all live nearby as well, and said they keep an eye for me, especially if they happen to see me going to and from work. They knew exactly what the creep looked like, since multiple times they had seen him around when they were their hangouts. Then, it was one night a little while after I got on a ride home, there was a knock at my door. I saw that it was the police. I answered, startled, and the officer started asking me questions about the creep. Apparently some of the kids who said they keep an eye out were good on their word and saw the creep slowly riding around my apartment complex in his car while they were hanging outside. Not long after, I closed the store and got on a ride home, seeming like he was trying to find out which building I was in. They immediately called the cops and tried to block him in until they got there, but he probably recognized them as well and sped out. They were able to get a vague description of his car and at least a partial plate number, but unfortunately never amounted to anything. The cops came to the store the next day when the store opened to meet with the security guards and exchange information and file a full report. I saw when I saw the kids come in to check in on me and hug them all, as they very easily could have gotten themselves hurt and killed trying to help me out. The police talked to and confirmed that when they also asked some other people in the apartment complex, people that had seen the car before and that behavior more than once on different days. He was waiting to catch me going to my apartment. Thankfully, that was the end of the creep saga as far as I know. I never found out his real name.